Welcome to News Nexus. Today we explore a story that is shaking the foundations of global finance. For more than 70 years, the United States dollar has been the undisputed heavyweight of international trade. From oil shipments in the Middle East, to car exports in Europe, from commodity markets in Asia, to financial hubs in Africa, the dollar has reigned supreme. It has been the glue that held together the modern trading system. But the winds of change are blowing. Quietly at first, and now with growing momentum. A number of countries are taking deliberate steps to move away from the US dollar. This process, often called de-dollarization, is no longer just a theory debated by economists. It is happening in real time, with governments, central banks, and major corporations shifting their trade deals and financial strategies. In this video, we will look at 10 countries that are already abandoning the dollar in trade. We'll examine how they are doing it, why they are doing it, and what it means for the future of global power. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why the dollar's dominance is no longer untouchable, and how a new financial order may be emerging before our eyes. Let's begin with the biggest player of them all, China. China is at the heart of this movement. As the world's second-largest economy and its largest exporter, Beijing has long been uncomfortable with the dollar's global dominance. Why? Because it gives Washington enormous leverage. The United States can impose sanctions, cut off Chinese companies from dollar-based financing, and restrict access to the SWIFT payment system. To counter this, China has been systematically promoting its own currency, the yuan. In recent years, Beijing signed bilateral agreements with dozens of countries to settle trade directly in yuan. Perhaps the biggest shock came when Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, agreed to sell oil to China in yuan rather than dollars. China has also built its own financial infrastructure. The cross-border interbank payment system, known as CIPS, is China's answer to the Western-controlled SWIFT network. It allows international banks to settle transactions directly in yuan. Beijing's strategy is clear. Reduce reliance on the dollar, protect itself from US pressure, and ultimately position the yuan as a global reserve currency. If China is the architect of long-term de-dollarization, Russia is the country forced into it by circumstance. After the conflict in Ukraine and the wave of sanctions that followed, Russia was effectively cut out of the dollar system. Its central bank reserves in dollars and euros were frozen. Major Russian banks were banned from SWIFT. Western companies pulled out of its markets. In response, Moscow accelerated what had already been a growing policy, ditching the dollar. Today, most of Russia's trade with China, India, and other partners is no longer in dollars. Instead, Russia uses rubles, yuan, and sometimes even rupees. By necessity, Russia is proving that large-scale trade can survive, and even thrive, without the US dollar. India is another fascinating case. For decades, India's foreign trade relied heavily on the dollar. But in recent years, New Delhi has been experimenting with alternatives. When sanctions disrupted global oil markets, India began buying large volumes of Russian crude, often paying in rupees or in UAE dirhams instead of dollars. India has also created arrangements with countries like Sri Lanka and Mauritius to settle trade in rupees. This reduces dependency on dollars and elevates the international status of the Indian currency. While the dollar still dominates India's trade, the direction is clear. India is steadily diversifying away from single currency dependence. In Latin America, Brazil leads the charge. As the region's largest economy, Brazil has long relied on the dollar for exports of soybeans, iron ore, and oil. But Brazil's leaders, especially President Lula da Silva, have been outspoken about the risks of dollar dependence. Brazil struck a major deal with China, its largest trading partner, to settle trade directly in yuan and reais, cutting the dollar out completely. Lula has even called for the BRICS bloc to create a new common currency that could one day rival the dollar. For Brazil, de-dollarization is about protecting sovereignty and shielding itself from US monetary shocks that ripple across Latin America. Perhaps the most symbolic move comes from Saudi Arabia, the birthplace of the petrodollar system. For nearly 5 decades, every barrel of Saudi oil sold globally was priced in US dollars. This guaranteed demand for dollars worldwide and cemented America's dominance. But today, Riyadh is rethinking the deal. Saudi Arabia has joined BRICS, has signed oil contracts in yuan, and is exploring trade in local currencies with partners like India. This is more than symbolic. If Saudi Arabia permanently shifts even part of its oil sales away from dollars, the foundation of the petrodollar system itself begins to crack. Another Gulf state, the United Arab Emirates, is also part of this trend. Known for its global trade hubs in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, the UAE has become a laboratory for non-dollar trade. In 2023, it completed its first oil sale with India in rupees, signaling that even US-aligned Gulf nations are hedging their bets. For the Emirates, this isn't rebellion, it's practical adjustment, positioning themselves as a financial crossroads in a multipolar world. Iran, meanwhile, has lived outside the dollar system for decades. Crippled by sanctions, Tehran long ago abandoned the greenback. It trades using gold, yuan, euros, and even cryptocurrencies. Its closer ties with Russia and China, and its entry into BRICS, only deepen this path. For Iran, the dollar represents pressure, and abandoning it represents survival. In Africa, South Africa plays a leading role. While not as aggressive as others, it has increasingly spoken out against over-reliance on the dollar. South Africa supports using local currencies in trade and has backed calls for a multipolar financial system. There are even discussions of a potential BRICS currency. Still in early stages, yes, but the conversation alone shows how fast the financial landscape is shifting. Turkey is another example, caught between East and West. Facing inflation, repeated crises, and at times tense ties with Washington, Ankara has turned to alternatives. It has paid Russia for natural gas in rubles and lira. It has strengthened currency swap deals with China. For Turkey, diversifying away from the dollar is a way to reduce vulnerability and stabilize its fragile economy. And finally, Argentina. One of South America's largest economies, Argentina has battled inflation and dollar shortages for decades. In 2023, Buenos Aires made a landmark decision, paying for Chinese imports directly in yuan. By doing so, it conserved scarce dollar reserves while keeping trade alive. For Argentina, this shift is more than political. It's economic survival. So there you have it, 10 countries already abandoning the dollar in trade. From giants like China and Russia, to vital exporters like Saudi Arabia and Brazil, to pragmatic survivors like Argentina and Iran. The pattern is unmistakable. The reasons differ. Some want freedom from US sanctions. Others want to strengthen their own currencies. Some are challenging Western financial dominance, while others are simply trying to survive economic crises. But the outcome is the same. The world is slowly becoming less dollar-centric. Does this mean the dollar will collapse tomorrow? Absolutely not. The dollar remains the most trusted, liquid, and powerful currency in the world. It still makes up most of global reserves, and Wall Street remains the beating heart of global finance. But what has changed is the sense of inevitability. For decades, the dollar's supremacy seemed permanent, unquestionable, unshakable. Today, that illusion is gone. The cracks are visible, and more nations are walking through them. We may be entering a future that does not revolve around one currency, but instead a multipolar world, where trade is conducted in yuan, in euros, in rupees, and in digital currencies, alongside the dollar. And that raises the big question. What does a multipolar financial order mean for the United States, for global trade, and for ordinary people everywhere? Here at News Nexus, we'll keep tracking these historic shifts and explain what they mean for your life and your future. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the economic and political forces shaping our world. Until next time, stay informed, stay alert, and stay ahead.